Alrighty, for our final lesson exam, hopefully you are participating in this exam after we did the valuation report. Scott Family Real Estate, my name is Tyler Scott. I'm your instructor with DIY Home Valuation Mastery course. As we do here, I always put these on here and I just kill me. Let's get right into the exam. I don't want this to take too long for you. All right, as always, we're going to have 10 questions. We're going to go right through it. Question number 1, choose a correct answer. Which is not an example of a micro market? Is it A, Louisville, B, Kentucky, C, Knox County, or D, Knoxville? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. That's correct. It is Kentucky is not a micro market. It's way too large, way too big. Now, obviously, there are different types of micro markets. We'll get into that. We already did go into that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. So, good job. Question number 2, choose the correct answer. Which is not an example of a macro market? Southwest United States, Kentucky, Greater Dayton, Cincinnati area, or the Midwest? I'll give you 10 seconds. You are correct again. It is the Greater Cincinnati area. Is not a macro market. Kentucky obviously is a macro market. Southwest United States is obviously a macro market, and the Midwest is obviously a macro market. So Greater Cincinnati area is micro. The largest of the micros, but it's still considered a micro. Question number 3, choose the correct answer. What is the most likely scenario you would need to find a micro market pattern? That's going to be a little bit harder, so I'll give you a little more time. A variation of sold prices with the same home types in your sales comparison. B, anytime you're developing or calculating for adjustments for a value range. C, anytime you're developing or calculating for a weighted average. Or D, a variation of listed prices with the same home types in your sales comparison. I will give you 30 seconds starting now. Okay, the correct answer is A. So what is the most likely scenario you need to find a micro market pattern? When you see a variation of sold prices with the same home types in your sales comparison, right? Why did I say, what's the difference between A and B and D? A variation of listed prices, a variation of sold prices. You never compare listed prices. We discussed this. So it has to be a variation of sold prices within your home types of sales comparison. We use the example in our lesson of a ranch or a colonial or a Tudor and a colonial or those types of differences. Obviously, it's not any time you're developing weighted average or any time you're developing a value range, because you don't need to develop a micro market pattern every time you do evaluation, only when it becomes necessary. Question number 4, choose the correct answer. Which of the following is not an appropriate adjustment for a home valuation? A, home type, B, updated kitchen, C, bedroom, or D, tool shed. You have 10 seconds. Awesome. So it is D. D, tool shed is not an appropriate adjustment for a home valuation. Why is it D and not updated kitchen? B, if you chose B, because updated kitchen falls under quality or condition, and thus meaning that you can definitely make an appropriate adjustment for quality and condition. It's a bedroom, obviously, home type, obviously. Updated kitchen itself is not, but it can be directly related into condition or quality. Tool shed is not mentioned. Tool shed is not the same as a barn. A tool shed is much smaller. It's an impermanent, typically more often than not, an impermanent temporary building. It's not fully structured, so a tool shed is something that is not going to affect the value of a home, especially in adjustments. Question 5, choose the correct answer. How many adjustment criteria should be stated for the most accurate adjustment calculation? I'll give you 10 seconds. You are correct. The answer is 4. I went over this several times. It's also in the valuation report. You only do 4 adjustments for a home valuation, at least for my home valuation, how I teach it. Other people would go into 6, 7, 8, 9. It can do all these different things and give you a whole large sheet, but at that point you're getting into appraising and you're getting into high-level math, in which you don't need to do for the home valuation, right? The home valuation does not need all those. It needs the 4 most significant, and you should honestly have 3 comparables that are so comparable and close that you should only have 4 to 5 things that you need to adjust for. Question number 6, choose the correct answer. In calculating an adjusted weighted average, how many weights are used in the differential process? I'll give you 10 seconds. All right, yes, it is 10. Remember when we talked about the weighted process, we gave property number 1 5, property number 2 3, and property number 3 2, right? So they totaled up 10 in overall adjusted weighted average weights. We do that, we add all those up, and then we divide by the amount of weights that we give. And this creates a very accurate weighted average. 5 is too small, 15 and 20 are way too large. So, question 7, choose the correct answer. What is not an appropriate type of inspection? You will have 10 seconds starting now. Awesome, fantastic. Yes, you are correct. It's third person. You cannot rely on someone else's inspection of the property. That's what third person means. That means that, hey, you call up Jim Bob and Jim Bob says, hey, I inspected the property. Here's what I saw. It's impossible for you to do a home valuation if you yourself are not the one making the call on quality, condition, and features. Nor will you be able to do any comparison. You have to do it either in person, you have to do it virtually, or you have to do it indirectly. But it has to be you, the valuator. It has to be the valuator who does the inspection. Third person inspections is not just not appropriate, but it's not possible. So that's why third person is the correct answer, but it is not an appropriate type of inspection. Question 8, choose the correct answer. Which of the following is the correct amount of comparable properties needed for a sales comparison approach? You have 10 seconds. Yes, you are correct again. This should be a pretty easy one. 3 comparable properties. You're not doing 4, you're not doing 6, you're not doing 2. 4 and 6, I've done 4 before. I've even reckoned myself to do 6 before on an appraisal, but I mean, that's extremely difficult. Once again, that's when you're dealing with some market issues and some very, very difficult comparable properties. Or some higher level homes in which you've got to find the right usage here. 2 is not enough. 4 gets too complex for a home valuation, so it's always going to be 3, especially on my reports. Question number 9, choose the correct answer, true or false. A disclaimer is needed on the valuation report even if intended for private or personal use. You have 10 seconds. You are correct. That is true. A disclaimer is always needed on a valuation report. Valuations are so similar to appraisals that we do the same appraisal process for most of the valuation. It's just not as in depth. The purpose here, but you need to have that disclaimer because it's so similar. If anyone introduces this valuation as an appraisal with no disclaimer, you could be in legal trouble, you could receive fines, and or the individual could sue for misrepresentation. So a disclaimer is always needed on every valuation report, even if that sounds far-fetched, suing, but it can be. If it comes across that your valuation is an appraisal and they make certain sales or property or real estate decisions based upon what they believed was an appraisal because it didn't have a valuation on there, and then it affects them their ability to make money or their ability to sell, then and you're off for some reason, then they can come back and claim it upon you, and then that would come back to the state in which you're in or the authority that you're in, saying that you're giving appraisals without being a licensed or registered appraiser with the state, and that's a problem. That's a big no-no. So the disclaimer is always important on there. That's why I underline it. That's why I italicize it. That's why I put it in bold. And so as long as you use my report or something very, very similar, do never, ever, ever, ever not have a disclaimer on any valuation report. Even if it says this is a valuation report on the top, it does not matter. The disclaimer is still needed there because there are people, like if you were to take this course the first time, you probably didn't understand the difference between an appraisal and an evaluation. Now you do. I mean, they're very, very similar. They're almost identical, right? But they're not the same thing. One's a legal process. One's a process that's mandated and regulated by the government. Another is something for personal use and professional use. So, not official use, professional use. All right, and question number 10, choose a correct answer. What is the most important of lesson 3? Lesson 3.1, micro and macro markets, adjustments, the evaluation report, or all three are equally important. All right, yeah. So you probably put all three are equally important. And that is true. All three are equally important. You need to understand the micro and macro markets to understand potential adjustments. You need to understand adjustments to even do the valuation report. So you need all three to work with each other. Just like all three, like you need to know lesson 1, lesson 2, and lesson 3 to do any of all this. So especially on our practical exercise we get to. I didn't want to take too long on this exam. I know that you have all the essential information that you need. Now you need to refine that information with a couple of examples. Following this exam and this lesson, we do have 3 practical exercises. I highly, highly, highly encourage you watch the video for these practical exercises. It's going to work out any kinks that you potentially have, and it's going to give you the value for your time. You've already spent several hours watching and participating in these lessons. So it would not hurt you. It would definitely not hurt you, especially when it comes to valuation reports, because like we mentioned before, and when we're going over lesson 3.2 adjustments, one-off valuation, one-off category of condition or quality could cost you. In our example, it would have cost you $65,000 if it had the wrong quality or condition. $65,000. Let's say. In the example, you had a $350,000 home, $345,000 home. Well, $65,000 in one direction swing could say that you're looking at a $280,000 home or $270,000 home, when in fact you're looking at a $350,000. Or if it swings in the opposite direction, which honestly is worse, you're looking at a $345,000 home, and you're trying to sell it for the low 400s. This is where your house is going to sit, your market's going to stagnate, no one's going to be able to sell the property. Like, look, I did all this, it's correct. Why isn't it doing it? Well, it's because you didn't understand condition or quality, or whoever your evaluator was didn't understand condition and quality. And that's the big difference between a lot of real estate agents doing what's called a comparative market analysis, because all they're doing is analyzing the market, what buyers are willing to pay for in that particular market. What they're not doing is taking a look at condition, quality, features, boundaries, or any of the things that we've discussed, home types. They're not looking at any of that. And they're saying, all right, they're not doing adjustments. That's definitely not happening. So they're just looking at your property and saying, yeah, I know some similar properties based upon square footage, maybe bedrooms in this, blah, blah, blah. And based upon that, this is what the buyer might be willing to pay for it within a range, but that's not an accurate range. All right. So I went over this a couple times. Hopefully you had a good time here. I will hopefully see you in the practical exercises. If I don't, remember, watch these videos over again. If you have questions, do what you need to do. And I hopefully you can do some great things with these valuation skills. These are lifelong skills, no matter if you are buying your first home, you're a real estate agent, you are a new real estate appraiser, maybe you want to start your own home valuation business. Maybe you want to work for Scott Family real estate. I mean, not realty, real estate, and work with me and do these types of things. Maybe you are an employee that I required to watch this, and do these lessons. So that's very important. You better know that if you come to work for me. But this is something that's extremely important. If you do, for whatever reason, want to understand potential rental property valuation, which is completely different than single family homes. Even if it is a single family home, if it's a rental property, you base it differently based upon rental income and other things. I will likely have future lessons, if I don't already, on this platform that have GRM, that go over GRM, rental properties, rental valuations, as well as the cost approach and some other commercial things. So I will potentially build this out more, or you can have specific questions. Hopefully you can reach out to me. Without further ado, thank you so much for participating in all lessons here. I hope you do the best, and I hope to see you at the practical exercises. My name is Tyler Scott. I'm the instructor and owner of Scott Family Real Estate. This is DIY Home Valuation Mastery, and good luck out there.